According to the Humane Society of the United States, in 2011, out of the 78 million dogs owned in our country, only 21% were adopted from animal shelters. So, where did these other 60 million dogs come from? The answer is puppy mills. In an Albany Law Review, Kenny explains that puppy mills are the high-volume breeding operations populated by poorly treated dogs that are bred at every opportunity, caged their entire life, and receive minimal health care. Not only is this industry extremely harmful to the dogs directly involved, but it also contributes to the massive overpopulation of dogs in our country today. In order to regulate the commercial dog breeding industry, the Animal Welfare Act was signed into federal law in 1966. The AWA sets the standards for humane animal treatment. These regulations include housing, feeding, providing water, exercise, vet care, and sanitation. However, the AWA only sets the bare minimum acceptable requirements, which are vague, loopholed, and hardly enforced. The organization tasked with enforcing the AWA is the U.S. Department of Agriculture, or the USDA. Today I'm here to bring to attention the problems with the commercial dog breeding industry and the inadequacy of the Animal Welfare Act in enforcing humane animal treatment of dogs. The commercial dog breeding industry must be eradicated altogether, and to do so, the USDA must devote change in the Animal Welfare Act in order to enforce stricter regulations and higher animal care standards. It is impossible to calculate the exact amount of puppy mills in our country today because most breeders are undisclosed or backyard breeders. However, the American Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals estimates that there are over 10,000 puppy mills in our country today. The millions of puppies churned out each year are sold either online to individuals or most commonly to pet stores. Puppy mills are extremely overcrowded and unsanitary. And the ASPCA also reports that they can vary in size anywhere from 10 to 1,000 breeding dogs. Female dogs are bred non-stop every heat cycle with little to no time to recover from previous litters. When they are no longer able to reproduce, they are killed, often in cruel ways like shooting or drowning. Neglected puppies are kept in 24-hour confinement in small wire cages that are stacked one on top of each other in sheds that lack temperature control. These puppies receive minimal rations of food and water solely provided by rabbit-type water feeders. On top of this, they are also never groomed, which leads to horribly matted fur, and most have never seen a vet in their entire life. Puppies are sold at the dangerously young age of 8 weeks, which causes a plethora of mental, emotional, and physical problems. Now, some who aren't dog people may be quick to dismiss the problems with commercial dog breeding because they feel it doesn't affect them personally. They may allege that this industry is what some use to support their family, so why take away their source of income? These opinions would change if they realized that the commercial dog breeding industry affects far more than the dogs just directly involved. According to social compassion and legislation, in 2011, California taxpayers alone spent over $245,177,000 on housing and euthanizing stray cats and dogs. There are already millions of homeless and unwanted dogs in the U.S. today, and the commercial dog breeding industry drastically adds to this overpopulation. Kenny also brings to attention that about 6 to 8 million dogs and cats enter shelters across the country each year. Of this, 3 to 4 million are euthanized in the shelter system. There are already more than enough readily available dogs. The commercial dog breeding industry is unnecessary. To obtain a commercial dog breeding license, breeders are inspected to make sure they comply with the Animal Welfare Act regulations. Once a license holder, inspections occur randomly at least twice a year. During these inspections, any AWA violations found can result in suspended or revoked licenses or criminal or monetary penalties. According to the USDA, inspectors are only required to recommend enforcement action be taken against repeat violators, or dealers that consecutively violate the same exact subsection of the regulations. What this means is that as long as a dealer doesn't commit the same exact violation each time, they are not considered a repeat offender. If labeled a repeat offender, the inspector can choose to take no action as an option. And the USDA reports that no action is taken in 52% of repeat offender cases. In the rare situation that a commercial breeder is fined for violating the AWA, the USDA is notorious for reducing these monetary penalties significantly. In this case, the dealer is able to easily pay the fine rather than ensuring proper care for the animals. The AWA is much too easy to omit. In order to solve these problems, the USDA must deliberately enforce the Animal Welfare Act. Inspections must be stricter. To begin with, whether enforcement action is taken should not be reliant on whether it's a repeat offense. If any violation is serious, enforcement action must be taken. Secondly, inspectors should not have the option to take no action. The no action option should be removed altogether. All repeat violations should be addressed and not ignored. Thirdly, monetary penalties should be substantial and not reduced. Penalties should be based on the severity of the situation and the amount of animals involved. This way, dealers cannot easily pay the fine, and instead they will be forced to care for the animals properly. That way they can avoid future fines. Aside from the USDA, state and local governments have the rights to impose and add more restrictive regulations to the commercial dog breeding industry. The Independent reports that today over 200 cities and counties across the country already have bans in place on mass breeding operations. In fact, just 2 weeks ago, California became the first state to put a ban on animals from mass breeding operations. Change in the commercial dog breeding world is very feasible and just waiting to happen. If action is not taken and the Animal Welfare Act is not properly enforced, the overpopulation of dogs in the U.S. will grow exponentially. The HSUS reports that in 1972, shelters across the U.S. spent approximately $800 million on caring for animals. In 2007, that number had escalated to approximately $2.4 billion. Shelters cannot keep up with the growing number, and they have no choice but to euthanize. The longer we allow the commercial dog breeding industry to thrive, the more dogs will be homeless, abused, and euthanized by the million. But it doesn't have to be this way. If the USDA makes the Animal Welfare Act a serious priority, it will evoke a big change in the commercial dog breeding industry, and there will no longer be a drastic surplus of dogs in our country today. Shelters will have room for new dogs and will no longer be forced to euthanize by the million. And no dog will have to endure the conditions of a deplorable, confined, and inhumane puppy mill. In summation, now that you are well informed and educated on the commercial dog breeding industry, it is up to us to help make the change. We cannot rely on the current Animal Welfare Act to effectively set standards for humane animal treatment. The first way to stop the commercial dog breeding industry is to start with yourself and vow to not buy from internet sellers or pet shops. Adoption is always the best route. Then act beyond yourself and reach out to those who have the power to help. This could be your local or state government or advocacy groups like the Humane Society. If you'd like to express your concern to the USDA directly, you can go to tinyurl.com/endpuppymills. If we all do our part, both individually and collectively, we can put an end to the inhumane commercial dog breeding industry so every dog has a happy home and can live the life they deserve. Thank you.
Shoot. This is not working.